Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Sindoor, the director of parks, and what we are doing today is part of what we call the Pawnder Club, which we're particularly thrilled about the name and the play on words. It's basically a little club that we've formed, largely run by our backbed, our diploma graduates. And we wanted to kind of have a space where we can have ideas free flowing and make it accessible and make it free of cost so that a lot of people can don't have that barrier and can join in on the conversation. And of course, we wanted to limit the conversation to largely like-minded people because we don't want to get into a place where we are being defensive about our ideas. We really want to have a discussion around this. And if, we really want to invite people who are open to it, happy to engage with us and go past the basic understanding of it, not just kind of hash it out at a very basic level, but really go past for those who are really curious and want to learn more about the Barks Way and the ideas that are part of the Barks Way and how to embody it. I mean, apply it to your life with dogs, but also embody it and apply it to our own lives. And I think we'll touch upon some of those ideas. So today I'm really excited that the person taking the lead today is Saujanya Vijaynagar. She is the very first backbed graduate, very first diploma graduate. So there'll always be a very special place for her at Barks. I mean, all of them are just stunning and fabulous, but Saujanya does hold the, that claim to fame that she's the first, and that'll never be taken from you. So Saujanya runs Dog Promise. That's her personal consulting venture. And so she has a lot of interesting things going on. So today we'll probably be a bit of a sampler of the kind of conversations that Saujanya engages in. So I'm going to shut up at this point and let Saujanya take it from here.
Thank you, Sindoor. And I think I was super excited about having this Pawnder Club going for us and being able to share our ideas and have conversations like this. I think that's amazing. And thank you for giving all of us the opportunity to do that. And today's topic was something that was kind of inspired by a post that I put up on Instagram. And then there were conversations around rewards and how rewards probably aid relationships. They are great for getting our dogs to do things that we want them to do, but as we do in Buck's Way, we have to have conversations and critically analyze these ideas. So we really want to get into wondering whether our rewards really positive. So that's the topic of today's conversation. And as much as possible, I'd like to keep this like a discussion between all of us, and then you all can chime in the chat as well, and then we'll keep taking up questions that are interesting and pertinent to the conversation we're having. So that's about what we are discussing today. So the first and the most important thing that I wanted to share is actually my own story about how I was brought up as, a child. And I think a lot of us, I'm assuming here is that we look towards force-free and positive reinforcement ways of addressing with our dogs. So I am assuming over here nobody is with aversives and punishment-based. But I myself have never experienced aversives. My parents always brought us up with rewards and positive ways of encouraging behaviors. But unfortunately, it never led to a good relationship. I can probably think about a few examples. I think my parents were always about, do engineering and get your engineering degree, and we'll give you this and that, and all encouraging. But I could never authentically come to them and say, I didn't want to do engineering, and this is not something I want to do. But their praise, their approval, and the rewards just made me go ahead with the behaviors, so to say, as what they wanted me to do. But only in the last 3-4 years is when I could just move into authentic spaces and say, I don't want to do this. And they also received this with more authentic relationship and not so much as consequences. And I think this is a story I wanted to share because I feel like we believe that rewards means good relationship, but mine was one example of where we had decent relationship but never authentic, never fully being able to share our needs in the relationship, and being able to set boundaries without fear of consequences either. So I think that was a great starting point. It came right when I was doing my back bed. So in the last 5 years, I would say, from when I started my back bed, my parents and I have a great relationship because it's based on the principles of Bach's way. And it's very interesting if I look at it like that. So I wanted to share this experience, and I wanted you all to kind of chime in, and of course, Sindoor to chime in about how have you had any experiences with rewards in the past, and was it translating to an authentic self from your end? Any stories that you might have?
Yeah, so I think I will chime in while we wait for kind of the comments to come in, and then you can pick it up. And if any of you have thoughts, you should definitely put it in the comments. Um, I think you bring up some really important points, right? So we did have a conclave about attachments and secure base, and we spoke about this idea of secure attachment specifically in the context of dependencies, when one individual is dependent on the other. And I think that is critical for us here, because that changes the dynamic so much. It's not really a partnership among equals as much as we would love to have it that way with our dogs. The truth is that they're so heavily dependent on us that the power shifts to us significantly. And along with that, I think there are some kind of, the burden of of power, right? It's so easy. We control access to everything, that it is so easy for us to get them to do what we want. And I think on the other side, and I think the parent-child relationship that you brought up is, again, when we spoke about attachment theory, those relationships are so similar. That's really so many of those similar tests, especially Ainsworth's strange situation test, was very fundamental in revealing how similar these relationships are. So it's a conversation that we can have bravely and boldly. Um, and I think that example is a really good one, because how hard do we try for validation? And it's not just, it doesn't end with dependence, it carries on into our adult life. How many adults do we know who continue to live their lives because they're still waiting for that validation from their dad or their mom? And it's such a messed up situation, and in the process they're constantly sacrificing their authenticity, they're constantly sacrificing their own needs. um, of course, I did. My childhood was probably not as lucky as yours, in that there was a lot of aversives, but there were also a lot of rewards. And I wouldn't say that the rewards felt any more pleasant. I really felt like I was on a one of those wheels, running, because the bar kept moving, and I was just wearing myself thin. And a lot of it was, I know you're capable, and therefore, the bar moves higher, and here's a reward at the end of it. Um, and the worst part about this reward, right, is, you guys will laugh if I say this out loud, but the reward that was given to me to always stand first in class was a little troll doll, like this big. And for that, I broke my back. I drove myself into anxiety. I engaged in very maladaptive behaviors, but particularly things that gave me extraordinary anxiety. And I think that is my big fear when it comes to dogs, is putting a reward in front of them takes away the way they express to ourselves what their authentic needs are, where it is that they want to go, because they can get very blinded by that reward. And I think we're in a culture where you higher the stakes. These are high value rewards, and big task, high value rewards. Specifically when we look at things like dealing with fear and reactivity, and we can maybe deep dive into that a little bit more. I think this can really kind of we can shoot ourselves in the foot by doing this. And so that's kind of where my thoughts are at this point. Let's make it a little bit more interactive at this point.
Yeah. I'm just waiting if there are any other comments, but what you shared was right in the sense that we keep high, increasing the stakes for especially the dogs in context. And I wonder what skills are we actually giving the dogs, right, in terms of when we are constantly aiming for a behavior in a particular situation and a context, what skills are the dogs developing at the end of it? um, Recently there was one particular post that came into my attention, which was just about getting the dogs distracted from a particular situation in a social environment, and through rewards. Let's assume all of the conversations that we are talking about is through rewards and not punishments. But what skill is this dog developing at the end of it? Are they able to process the environment? Are they able to communicate with the individuals in the environment as well as with us about what they need? And are we developing the skills of actually reading our dogs? I feel like, and I was mentioning this in my previous YouTube live, right? Like if I get a food in my hand, Zoe will happily follow me anywhere. And I think that is not building any skill for her at the end of it, right? I mean, she's not able to read the communication, she's not able to process the environment, and she's not able to tell me what she wants in that situation from me. So I wonder if when we do these things in terms of getting a behavior in different contexts, and hyper focus on that behavior through punishments or rewards, are we really building skills that are actually necessary for our dogs? I think that is something to think about when we are constantly using rewards or punishments in different situations, and what are the skills we're aiming for, I guess.
Yeah, so and this kind of takes us to this thing that we've been harping on at Barks for a while, right? The difference between behavior and internal state. And I think that's a huge mistake that a lot of us have been making for the longest of time. And it's terribly sad that the very people who kind of uh, popularized these ideas did actually mention to us that did actually highlight that behaviors don't actually entirely reflect internal states. But at that time what was postulated is because we have no other way to measure internal states or get insight into internal states, let's measure behavior instead. And I think and this is an outdated idea, almost a century old. And I think it's time we start stepping past that. It's time we threw away that narrative and say that behavior, it doesn't necessary. I'm not saying it does not, but it does not, it's not transparent, it's not giving you the full insight into internal state. So I'm not going to count on it as being the absolute truth about the internal state of this dog. I think if we accept that, then it automatically brings us to the next question. Then what is? I do want to change the internal state of this dog. Then what is? Now that, unfortunately, and that's kind of why the behavior shortcut was taken, is not going to be easy. And that is why we're now talking about reading the dog's body language. We're talking about using things like, measuring pulse and stuff like that. We're talking about reading intent, reading the dog's physiological response as a downstream, right? So was the dog really stressed? No, I didn't really see any signs of stress. But then the dog slept for like 3 days after that continuous. The dog had loosies after that, had diarrhea after that. Then take all that into consideration. So that starts complicating things, and for dog professionals, that now moves their bar so high in terms of all the things that they have to learn in order to be able to read the dog. And I think therefore it is quite tempting to say, let me not get into this space, let's just focus on the behavior. And it's also very tempting because the people they work with, the people they consult, are often happy to see, I got the behavior that I wanted, so great, right? um, but there are a whole lot of questions to ask and uh, challenge there. One is, of course, you change the behavior. Did you really change the internal state? Two is, what did the dog learn in the process? What is the long-term learning that happened in the process? Did you temporarily fix the thing? Have you kind of glossed over it by teaching an alternative behavior? We know that neural pathways are not that easy to erase. Are you going to have a spontaneous recovery of the behavior that you were trying to kind of just bypass? And there are studies that tell us that all of this does happen, even with human beings, and with other animals. So this is not a revelation, right? But I think it is a conversation to be had to ask, and I think that is the challenge for me. I do not want to get stuck in a place where I have induced a behavior because I wanted it and I tempted you with this, amazing reward, and I got you to behave a certain way. And I convinced myself that this is what you wanted. I don't want to be stuck in that situation. And so, and again, when it comes specifically to things like fear and reactivity, I want the dog's agenda up front and center. And that is going to quickly disappear if I start trying to modify it with rewards, put my agenda up right and center, up right and center, up front and center. Oh my God, I'm having total brain fog. Sorry, please excuse me. I'm like spending time in the hospital a lot. So with my father. And so I'm trying to squeeze this in.
Yeah. I mean, firstly, thank you for doing that amidst whatever you're going through personally as well. You brought a good point about uh, understanding the internal state of the dog and just modifying the behavior on the surface, right? So I think that that's a good place to bring in the idea of, and I'm going to make a very controversial statement here, I think, but I feel like maybe what we are looking at as punishments and rewards being positive and punishments being negative, seem like two sides of the same coin where you're trying to do the same thing, which is get compliance of the individual, and you're just using two different approaches to the same goal of compliance. And I think yeah, I feel like we need to move away from the compliance based approach, the obedience based approach, the approach where my behavior is the primary focus, and try to get our dogs to behave in a certain manner, and move away to what we focus on Bach's way and the gentle parenting that we talk about. And I feel like that is a completely different way of addressing our dogs as individuals, and not even be hyper focused about behaviors, right? It's more about their well-being and the kind of skills that they need to survive in the day-to-day lives or in difficult situations, I think.
Yeah, this kind of polarizing language, positive, negative. I think this has a problem. It is very reductionist, right? It has a problem of oversimplifying things. And it has a problem of oversimplifying to such a great extent that you really think that you're two worlds apart. But the real conversation is in the nuance of it, right? It's not about whether it's positive or negative. It's about uh, what are the other questions? For instance, whose agenda is it? Whose agenda are you trying to forward with positive or negative? The other question is, does it impact internal state? You talk about, conditioned emotional response, right? Are you actually changing the response through conditioning? We know that this happens in negative situations. We still don't have evidence that it happens in positive situations. So are you really doing it, or are you blindly convinced on this idea that I can change the emotional response through behavior? You can ask other questions around this. For instance, again, long-term learning. Is that really happening? So those are nuanced questions that we have to ask. But by just saying that, oh yeah, I'm positive, for following a positive way, and therefore anything I get out of this is great, it's ethical. The other one is consent. Oh my goodness, right? The number of people who talk about consent around this, but is this really consent? Agency. We talk about agency. Yes, the dog has the freedom to go ahead and do what they want to do. But is it really? I mean, if I put $1 million in front of you and say, eat bugs for $1 million, is that really, do you really have agency in that situation? Or have I put something in front of you that's so hard to say no to? Would you be doing this? That's the example that I gave when I spoke about it in Chicago as well. If I had true agency, I would be standing on the stage barefoot. bare feet, but that's my comfort thing. But I know that at some level I'm seeking your validation, your approval, and therefore I'm dressed the way I am to get your approval. And so that's not really agency. And of course, the challenge to that is, not everybody gets to give consent all the time. Not everybody gets to have agency all the time. And all of that is great, and that nuance you can have, acknowledging that I have stripped this individual of this agency in this situation. And it's an important acknowledgement to make, because you will play that card lesser and lesser when you acknowledge it, right? You will say, okay, here I'm not going to do it. And I think that's the problem with reductionism. And Evie has a very interesting point there, which I also think we should factor into this whole thing. She says people are underestimating others' ability in knowing or even discovering what is good for them, and that is such an excellent point to make, right? Especially with fear, and I talk about this frequently when you're dealing with fear-related issues or reactivity issues. Learning coping strategies for your own fear is very self-rewarding in itself. If any of you have done work on this, um, you know, you know that, after my husband passed away, for the longest of time, I had so much anxiety, I could not drive. And when I started finding ways to be able to drive, it is so self-rewarding in itself. And when we work with reactivity and fear, that is really what I want to kick in the dog. It has to kick in the dog, which is to say, I'm now able to maintain social contact. I'm able to meet my inelastic needs for social contact. I'm able to do this because I've gotten past my fear. And that self-rewarding mechanism kicks in on its own. If it is not kicking in, there's something else wrong. And we need to address that. And that gets exposed when you allow the self-rewarding mechanism to kick in, rather than saying, I'm not even going to listen to it. I'm going to turn deaf to that. I'm going to completely shut that feedback out by putting a reward in front of you. And so your self-reward, whether it exists or no, whether you're experiencing it or no, is moot. It's a moot point to me, because I'm putting a reward in front of you anyways. And then it becomes your agenda. It is, that's probably why the self-reward is not kicking in. Or the dog has not had the habit of, experiencing this, not had the experience of experiencing this. So give them a moment, give them a hot second to, process this and say, oh, I loved it. I'm able to deal with this. I have seen this on the faces of dogs, and it is fabulous when they come back and say, did you say it? I nailed it. I got it. And they're like puffed out, and they're enjoying this. And every time I have seen it, and because I think I got to experience it early on and I got to see it, I realized, my God, that's really what we want for them. My treat doesn't matter. Me saying good boy, treats, all of that doesn't matter. That is authentic. It's coming from within. And I urge you to try to look for that, to see it, to make it happen. Because once you see it, you will never be able to unsee it. And that is your reward. That's the reward that you can get hooked on. It's pretty fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think the fact that we also get to experience the street dogs around us also gives us a lot of, uh, ability to think other ways, because the three dogs that are living right now in with us, none of them would fall for a treat and be like, okay, fine, I'll do this for a treat. And it gives us more in terms of, okay, fine, what is going on with them and what can we do. And I think we need to extend that respect and that agency, or the space to allow for agency for our companion dogs as well. I think there was one statement that was made by Sudarshan in the first comment, which was, I probably deserved it because I was operating at an extreme. And I think uh, that kind of caught my eye, because I feel like a lot of us, when we do talk about, be it ourselves or even like changing a behavior for our dogs in certain situations, or putting our dogs in certain situations, because we have a sense of, no, situation is something our dogs have to be in and there is no other choice. I think there is a bit of putting a dog at fault, and or be like, your dog has to learn it, or your dog needs this, they have to behave in this manner, and if they don't, then you either up your reward, the stakes of your reward, or you give them the aversives. And I feel like uh I think puts an unfair, stand for the dogs and who's receiving this. And again, not learning the entire situation of what's going on, right?
Yeah. And, so one thing that's a constant feedback from people who do, 101 and backbed more so is, um, what is the most important thing that you learned from this course? And they say, I learned kindness towards myself. Right. And this comes from there, which is, you know, if I look back at a lot of my behaviors when I was younger, and I purely look at the behavior, and I would probably say, yeah, that's bad behavior. It's extreme behavior. It's bad behavior. But when we come at it with kindness and start asking ourselves, but why? As a child, why would you engage in it? You're having trouble emotionally regulating. Even as an adult, I have trouble emotionally regulating. But why? There is a but why that you can go back on. And the kindest approach, and I think I've had the good fortune or bad fortune. Life is a mix of all kinds of fortunes and misfortunes. But I had, growing up, I had upbringing which largely believed this, right? Which is, oh, that's bad behavior. And therefore, we will try and fix the bad behavior, either through punishments or through rewards. And then I, met my wonderful husband, late husband, of course. And every time I struggled, he was, but why? He was that person. And he was that person who would say, if you're struggling with it, let's try to understand where it comes from. And I'd like to support you there. I'd like to, he was always there. He was always supportive through this. He was always supportive through my struggle. We're not necessarily wired social beings. One of the most critical things of social beings, most of our brains, again, there are extremes in all, and those are pathological situations that need very specific kind of an intervention. And that number is always going to be relatively low because it is, again, it doesn't give you evolutionary benefits, because social beings have to have behaviors where we don't isolate, we don't harm each other, intentionally, we don't engage in bad behaviors. It is either we don't meet social expectations, in which case it's social expectations that's the problem, or we are having trouble emotionally regulating, we are having trouble expressing, we are having trouble with filling that large hole in our heart, and we're chasing the dragon, so to say, right? The dopamine chase, the great dopamine chase. And I think by labeling it as bad or extreme, we are giving ourselves a free pass. We are letting ourselves off the hook, where we are not willing to do a double click on it. We're not, because it takes effort. It's a frustrating journey at times to keep going down the but why path. But that's the Bach's way. You don't have a way out of it, right? You got to do it this way. So we will continue to skill ourselves. We will continue to learn and educate ourselves. We'll continue to learn, how to explore what's behind it. And once you do explore what's behind it, then there's no question of punishment or rewards. It's a question of support and attachment. That's what it boils down to. Meeting needs, support, and attachment.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I'm just
Oh,
I
there are some
you
interesting questions here too.
questions.
So whenever you're ready, let's
Yeah,
take
yeah.
those as well. Yeah.
Shall we take them? I think Ahana is here. I don't know. Does she want? Ahana is another Pawnder Club admin member, and she's here if she wants to come
Wait, I
on.
have another way to say that. Ahana is also a backbed graduate
Backbed.
who's going to graduate very quickly. I'm adding
Yeah.
pressure, Ahana.
Only you can do that.
Hi.
Hey, want to add something, Ahana?
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about something that happened a while ago. Around like a little over a year back, Loki had got tick fever, and because of tick fever, he had like a lot of medicines to have. So I used to do this thing where I would give him like one treat, one medicine, one treat, one medicine. And I'm like, this is like a really nice way to give him medicine. And you could tell when he's having the medicine, he's absolutely hating it because he'd go like, whatever, I don't like it. But because there are so many treats involved, he would come every morning when I'm like preparing the thing. He would just come and he would sit there and wait for me. And that kind of got me thinking once, like it's something that he clearly doesn't like. I mean, he has to have it, but he doesn't like it. And he doesn't know why he's having it. He doesn't understand. And, the only reason he's doing it is because he's getting the tweet. And it kind of made me think like how right is it just because it's making it convenient for us, like that we can kind of make them do whatever it is and just shape whatever we want out of them just to fit into our sense of like convenience, when now there are like so many better ways to do it. Like Sajanya did like a really nice video on cooperative care where she did like eye drops without like any treats or anything. And when that's possible, when we just need to kind of meet them halfway and do it in a way that it's not convenient for us, but it's better for them, basically. So yeah.
Yeah. And quite honestly, when it comes to medicines, there are probably situations where it's a last ditch effort. I would probably do it, right? But I think you bring up a valid point. It should make us take a step back and think, which is, look at how far they're willing to push themselves for our rewards and our approvals. And therefore, it should remind us that, this is not their authentic selves that's coming into the front. Now, like I said, I might cross that boundary. I might actually put a big reward in front of them because there's something that I want done very urgently. But acknowledging the fact that I have actually done this, I have taken away your authentic self, and here's this reward that I'm putting on the table for you to sacrifice your authentic self and meet me where I want you. And this is, I'm getting it my way here. That acknowledgement, I think, makes us be a bit more parsimonious about it. It makes us want to not do this as frequently. It makes us ask ourselves, well, is there another way to do this? And with eye drops, yeah, we discovered this, right? Like we started this, one of our CE 101 students asked this, we spoke about this, and then she did it, and then you did it. And I think Anushri put up a video where she did the similar thing too. And we're now starting to explore, oh, okay, can we all do this way? And if so, why not? Why not actually do it where the dog is actually letting you say, okay, you know what, I'm not, here's the advantage, right? You give treats and you're doing something to a dog that the dog is terrified of, and he's like, I don't know what you're doing, but oh my god, I really want this treat, so I'm just going to put up with this. Versus what you did, Saujanya, what you demonstrated on it is the dog actually saying, yeah, i've I don't think this is going to hurt so bad, so do it. State of mind, what state of mind are they in? And this is precious. My dad's in the hospital right now, and I'm beginning to realize, putting him through something, because he's a doctor, so he's able to understand everything. He is so much more calmer than, I see the patients on the next set of tables, their eyes are like this, they're like, what is happening to me, what is being done to me? And that, they're not getting these explanations for it, and they don't know, they know they don't have a choice. And my dad, on the other hand, and and I'm able to keep a cool head too. So we sit down and we're like, okay, what's happening? We feel so much more in control. Now, for those of you who want to geek this up, there are studies that show that, when patients are more in control, and we're talking about medical care here, when patients are more in control of, the pain medication, for instance, or in general, their life, their stress levels go down, they're able to cope better. This is quality of life, isn't it? That is what it boils down to. This is quality of life. When life gets terrible, when life is difficult, do you have the coping strategies to say, okay, I'm not terrified through this process, I'm not losing my mind through this process, and I have a sense of control over this. And I think that exploration starts only when we take rewards off the table as a, you know as I'm not saying take it off the table completely. I'm saying take it off as something that is, oh, the best thing that has ever happened to us. Let's just use it left, right, and center everywhere. Rather say, I recognize what it is. I recognize that it is my way of getting my way. And I'm going to use it as parsimoniously, as little as possible. There's another point here. Sachini, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just add one point about cooperative care, because, and thank you, Hannah, for bringing that up, because I feel like that is one place where a lot of people do come up and say, I do want to use rewards because it helps me in some, critical care for my dog, and that's important care. And I think, as you said, Sindoor, like with Zoe, I think with treats would have been easy 90%. 10% she's so strong with her boundaries, and if we approach it in a certain way, she is like, no, what you're doing is not okay. And initially we have gone through this bit of, even with vets and groomers and things like that, where they have had to like put her down, hold her down and do it, and she's that strong about her boundaries that, no, I'm not okay with this. And I felt like that is so stressful on her, that is so not consent based at all. And I feel like exploring this gives us a chance to just understand, take a step back and then just understand and explore other ways. If we are just about, okay, treats, as you said, is the best way to go about it, and rewards is the best way to go about it. We are never going to acknowledge what we are putting our dogs through, and that it is violating their body autonomy and consent, while not fully, cooperating through the entire process. I think that was the only thing that I wanted to add.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually, I'd like to add something there. I recently did a podcast, and I'll try to share the link of the podcast with you guys, because I discussed in a little bit more detail about the kind of consent-based myotherapy that we do, right? Where again, we don't use treats, we don't use muzzles, we don't use any kind of restraint. We don't even do the massage on a table. We do it on the ground so that the dog can get up and walk away. And I think with that kind of hands-on treatment that we're doing, the feedback from the dog is very, very critical, because when you do massage, and anybody who's had a massage or should be able to relate to this right away, when you do a massage, if you're uncomfortable with what is being done, you're going to tense your muscles very quickly. And if you tense your muscles as a myotherapist, as a myofascial uh, uh, you know uh, treatment of modality of treatment, that's terrible. I want your muscles to be loose. I'm trying to loosen your muscles. You can't be working against me on this and tightening yours. So I need you to be rather relaxed about it, and I can't tell you to be relaxed about it. So I actually need your feedback significantly. So I can't have you saying, okay, do it, fine, I need the treat so badly, so I'll let you do it. I can't do that. I really need your authentic feedback on what is hurting you, what is making you anxious, and I need to work around that. So I think even from a treatment perspective, I think the more we start factoring in dogs' input on this, and Zufami is also another one of this, applied Zufami is another one of this, where we work with dogs' feedback, right? The more we start factoring the feedback in, the more opportunity we get to be awed by what feedback they can actually give us, the wisdom that they have and what they can give us. Of course, that's a whole other topic, and I don't want to dive deeper into it, but at this point, I just want to take a moment to point out that we do have Sajanya is doing a lot of these talks. So Sajanya, you can talk about it. We do have 101, and we have the auditorium as part of the 101. So in the auditorium, we do deep dives on some of these. So if you want, I'll bring up those topics there. And Sajanya, please just go
yeah,
for it and just inform the others, where can they listen to us more on these?
yeah,
We can
yeah.
go on endlessly.
Yeah, actually, I'm enjoying doing these kind of things, right? Like, where just come in and share ideas. So I'm doing that a lot on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. I will share that after our session on the message, on the group. And I also have a Patreon. I'm planning to start like having conversations and then doing a little bit of, deep dive on ideas there as well, and then maybe even discuss research papers as well. So I think those are the two places where I am focusing a lot more these days, I would say.
Yeah. All right. So there was another point that actually somebody put in here, which I thought was a very interesting one. I found R plus training to be challenging for humans, as most people do not want to be constantly walking around with treats and training the dog. This hit me in the face like a ton of bricks when I was somewhere. well, I'm not going to mention where, and I saw this person, clearly a professional who clearly believed in R plus training. And my goodness, that dog was being rewarded for good behavior. Where there were a lot of people, good behavior was considered sitting down, not getting into trouble, and just sitting down and laying down was considered good behavior. Now you're treating a dog for inactivity, which means there was a steady, like she was just raining treats, right? It was just non-stop. Every few seconds, there was a hand going into the pocket, treats coming out, hand going into the pocket, treat coming out. Dog is still resting, treat the dog again. Good behavior, good behavior. She gets up and starts walking. Dog is following her. Treat the dog. Dog is, she turns right. The dog follows. Treat the dog. So it was non-stop. And I was like, is that effective arm workout? Because I know my elbows would be hurting at the end of this. And when people argue that R plus training is actually the more accessible thing that people can do, I cannot imagine people do. I would not be able to do it. And I know because I tried. I tried this a long time ago. I just could not keep it up. And my God, my husband and I fought over this. I would be like, oh, you're supposed to give this many treats. I counted the number of treats. You've clearly not given it, on this occasion. And I think R plus trainers can have like a hotline to marriage counseling. I've heard so many people have arguments around this because, it is really difficult to keep up with this kind of a treating schedule. It's not as easy as it's marketed out to be. And then the other aspect of it, which is the dog state. I was observing the dog. As far as she's concerned, she got what she wanted, which is the dog is not getting up and running around, but the dog is relaxed. Was the dog actually relaxed? No, because a relaxed dog, I've seen what a relaxed dog looks like. Flopped out, right? My dog, if she were next to me, most of the times I'm settled here, she's sitting here or sleeping here, and she's completely flopped out, sometimes even snoring, sometimes legs up in the air. This dog was like looking up. It's like the dog had learned to count time. So like every 10 seconds or every 30 seconds, the dog is looking up. His posture was like this all the time. So stiff. I was getting a shoulder pain looking at that dog, right? It was such a stiff body language. He's walking and he's looking up. Neck issues. We know this. Julia talks about this in Garland myotherapy. I think the CAM guys talk about it too. Turid talks about it too. If you're constantly looking up like this, there is no way you're not getting a neck pain. I know this because I've been the shortest girl in class. And looking up at the board like this, it is not easy. It is going to give you a neck pain. And of course, none of this behavior is what the dog would have wanted to do. And we are able to get most of these kinds of behaviors, but actually the relaxed state, without actually constantly dispensing and raining treats on the dog, because we worked on the relationship, we worked on their needs, we understand how it goes, I understand that there are situations where I know you will relax, and there are situations you won't. It's simply too much to ask of you. I can't take you to a room full of people and expect you to relax. A room full of dog lovers who are going to be squealing all around you and expect you to be relaxed. That's just unrealistic. Yes, I can achieve it with my treats. And then what? Pat myself on my back? I mean, that dog didn't relax. Who was this whole thing for? Was this show and tell? Anyway, you take it, Saujanya.
I was waiting for that story after the comment. I was like, lots of people say Bach's way is difficult, right? Like, you have to build the relationship. It's such a slow process. And I don't have to hyper focus on my dog's behavior at all. And as you said, even the ones who come here and use our house as Airbnb and hostel and whatnot, they
You're
come.
talking about those dogs, right? Just
Yeah.
to clarify.
Yeah, dogs. The three of them also, they come here, they sleep all day, right? And that is a relaxed state for them. They are feeling safe in the space. All their basic survival needs are met. They're not stressed about it. And there are very obvious times when they get flustered or stressed. And that is when I have to respond and see, okay, how do I help them in that situation? But I'm not hyper focused on their behaviors at all points. So I think I would obviously, as you said, would find uh, R plus or like constantly hyper focus on our dog's behavior also very difficult. And it may just only solve our situation and our purpose, which is just to get our dogs to behave a certain way, while not looking at what the situation or the environment is doing to our dogs at the end of it. And whether like my sister had come down in November and we had a lot of stressful situation. We were like going up and down from our house to my parents' house. We went to the airport twice, like once to pick her up from the airport and once to drop her. And Zoe had to be with us all the time because now Sammy is not there. So she has to come along with us if we have to step out. There's no way she'll stay at home. And she managed the situation so beautifully. Imagine airport in Bangalore, international airport at your peak international departure times and arrival times. And she did it so beautifully. And nothing, no treats, no, constantly rewarding and whatever. And it was more of collaborating in that situation and then understanding each other, right? And I think that was so much more, I think, rewarding to me, I guess.
Yeah. It is very rewarding. I mean, same thing with Chiru. I'm not in a place to talk about her last month, but really the kind of collaboration that she gave me, the space that she gave me, the kind of trust she put in me, the effort whatever is the effort that goes into relationship building and, creating secure attachments is worth its weight in gold and diamonds and then some more, because of what I saw. But forgetting that, last month, even otherwise, people would ask me, oh, you have snakes on your farm. What's Chiru going to do? Like, nothing. My she was so good at it. She would go look at it and bark and come back running, and she's like, my human, go take care. Like, it was just so easy. I would let her out. She would be playing with the other dogs, and then there's another dog that's coming in. I'm not very sure whether that dog is going to be good or no. And Chiru would turn and look at the other dog and assess the other dog, and her feedback and judgment on it was so much more superior to mine. I didn't have to try and guess if the new dog that's approaching is going to be good with Chiru or no, because Chiru was pretty good at it and she always played safe. Nishi, on the other hand, didn't play safe, but she knew how to placate pretty much every dog. So they were so good at assessing based on their scale what level of challenge they can take and giving that feedback. So this is really worth its weight in gold, because I'm not stressed out anymore. And when people ask me, oh, do you think Chiru is going to be able to handle that? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's ask her, because her feedback is actually better than what I can say here. And that is worth it. So I think the effort goes into the beginning part of it, where you're trying to figure out how do you actually build a relationship. And this is, of course, a huge commentary on what we've become socially. We have become so socially awkward in terms of our connections. I was just having a chat with my dad saying this is a generational thing. You know, he has managed to, he's been in that general ward for, a day and a half, and he's made friends with everybody over there, all the nurses, all the patients. Put me in the similar situation, and I don't make connections that easily. I'm not, and this, I think we are a generation that has been forced into living lives more isolated. And so we have lost a lot of those skills. And I realized it starts with, in their case, it starts with something as simple as eye contact and a big smile. And I realized, oh my God, we don't do that. A lot of our generation, we don't do that at all. I look at somebody and I'm like, get out of my way. That's the expression I have on my face. So there are these little things. And that's just the example between my dad and I. Now, each of us have, our barriers that we have put up. And so I think we probably have lost the ability to connect ourselves with, our conspecifics. And so it can get even more challenging with dogs. And so I think that is the discovery part that really gets to people, right? They're like, how do I do it? I mean, this question that I can never get out of my head is, somebody asked me this, operationalize it. And I'm like, dude, you're asking me to operationalize love. You're asking me to operationalize love language, operationalize connection. This, like, something is terribly wrong with our society, that you want step 1, step 2, step 3 on this, right? You have to discover what your love language is. And we've discussed this in the past. Your love language can be different from mine. How I connect with, the creatures of the world or human beings can be very different from how you connect. And each of us have different ways to do it. And I think that part can get pretty challenging, because people don't understand that this is a huge gap that's there within us. But also, I think this is the beauty of it, because once you internalize this, you start understanding it, and you start applying it with dogs. And this is the gift that we have all been given. Our dogs can then become our ambassadors to the rest of the humankind. Then we learn a lot about how we maintain and build relationships and strengthen our attachments with other humans. And interestingly, as part of that journey, you realize, how do you do it for yourself? How do you show up authentically for yourself? How do you support yourself? And that's kind of, it comes back to the idea of, how kindness towards ourselves is finally the ultimate discovery that most of us end up with, I mean, the destination of this journey seems to be that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Backbred started with me helping my dogs and then understanding dogs, then improving my relationship with my parents, and then finding the right kind of partner for myself. And then today I'm in a space where I'm able to actually understand my body, feedback, like, how I feel in certain situations and what my needs are, what my coping mechanisms are. That I didn't start there. And I think this is where it has gotten me to. So I think it is a lifestyle choice that we then end up making, right? It's a long-term lifestyle. Like, it's just a life that we choose, I think, once we start on this journey. The other thing that I wanted to obviously bring up was, what do you do when you can't give treats or the dogs say no to treats, right? So that is the other part of the conversation that we need to have, because this came up in one of the groups that I'm part of, where there are dogs who have EPI or IBD, and you can't constantly keep like bombarding them with treats. So I think it's also fair to explore other approaches and other ways of, addressing situations, because not always our dogs can be given treats, will accept treats, and it is better not to go down the route of my dog is stubborn or my dog is a bad dog, and treats are not right for my dog, so maybe I'll have to use the other way of addressing the situation. So I think it's fair to also think of what are the different situations, because I think I mean, you'll hear Laddu barking in the background. He's been quite restless today because we've been having people come over, and I could try giving him treats, but he's not a food motivated dog at all. So it's very easy to then go down the route of increase the treat, high value treats, or be like, oh, this dog needs to be punished and things like that. But I think street dogs have taught us that, right? Like they
Yeah.
don't budge that easily in terms of like I've seen their body autonomy, their agency is so important to them, and they're not ready to give that up that easily. And I think it's worth exploring other ways, because we might end up in such situations. For me, it was hard because Sammy was a very food motivated dog. So I knew he would push himself in certain situations, especially when we did the sensory integration workshop. I had to be so careful with Sammy because I didn't want him to end up pushing himself and then hurting himself in the process, because that was not the goal. It would be counterproductive. So I had to really move away from food and treats. But I also wanted to bring up that this doesn't mean we don't praise our dogs or we don't give them nice things at all. It's so much more than praising them for a behavior or rewarding them for a behavior, versus appreciating their presence in our lives, appreciating them as individuals, appreciating their abilities and wisdom, like you mentioned, right? Like we end up seeing so much and learning so much from them, and I think that's the appreciation and the positives that come out of it is that over the point of focusing on behavior itself, I think.
Yeah, it's actually a very subtle difference, but I think, and you really need to start walking this path to see this. So I was just thinking about this. Um, I do, let's say that I give a talk, it goes really well, and then I come back and I'm sharing this with my friends and family. Um, I don't expect rewards from you for having performed well. But what I do expect is that we celebrate together. We share our joy. I am happy and I'd like for you to be happy. And I think there is that distinct difference. If you try to reward me for it, that is then power play, which is that, I am doing what you want me to do, and the reward becomes the end goal, not the experience of it. Whereas if you're celebrating with me something that I actually thoroughly enjoyed and I'm feeling chuffed about, myself for having achieved it, that's a relationship building thing, that strengthens attachments. And again, I think it helps us if we actually word it the right way. And of course, take food off the table as a treat, but say that, it always, when in doubt, it always helps me to internalize this language. What is the language I want to be using? If this was my younger sister, what would the language I'd be using? I would not be telling her, good girl, you deserve this reward. Like, that's not it. I would actually be telling her, wow, let's celebrate together, let's have something together. And often joint celebrations involve both of us eating. Right. And I think that there is a quality to this where, we're doing this together, we're enjoying this together. And sometimes what they are very happy and thrilled about is not exactly something that, is something that I particularly like. Chiru used to come back and say, I chased that bird. It's not that I need it or not that I want it, but you are looking so thrilled with yourself that, that celebration is still on the table for it. I may not be in the mood for celebration if you decide to, chase away, my friend, and then come back and say, chased away your friend. And in which case, I'm actually going to go down the path of trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I want to do differently and how do I want to deal with it this differently? But I would still not ignore the dog feeling terribly great about themselves. I would probably tone down my celebration because I'm just human and I can't, pull out such a great celebration for it. But I would probably still say, oh, you did something that you think is so great. Okay, that's your thing. If that's your thing, that's your thing. Uh, and again, each of us would deal with this differently. But I think it would be great to think of, you know, ch- change the rhetoric in our mind, change the words in our mind. Think, instead of rewarding, instead of praising, think of celebrating with them. And I think different opportunities show up. How do you celebrate? How do you celebrate with your loved ones? How does your dog want to celebrate? And that goes towards relationship building. And then you start asking yourself these questions, right? What are the things we should be celebrating? What are the things I don't want to celebrate? And how would that make me feel if I wanted to celebrate something and somebody else didn't? What would be the kinder response for them? Right? What is the gentler way for them to let me down? So there's a lot of paths to explore, and we're quite running out of time.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to just say if anyone has any other points to add, since we are running out of time, and any other tangents that we can take it probably in another conversation of the Pawnder itself, or I can like take this off on my YouTube live as well. You made a great point, because I think there was a session I was sitting with, facilitated by a therapist, and they mentioned that there's difference between appreciation and acknowledgement, where appreciation puts a subconscious bias towards a certain behavior, because you're putting that condition that I like this behavior. So there's a bit of a standard setting that, I want you to behave this way next time because I appreciate this, versus acknowledging efforts, acknowledging, journeys is so different, because you are present there irrespective of how the individual is behaving. And I had this, chat on my YouTube live last week, and I felt like it is so great with our relationship with our dogs, because when we appreciate a certain behavior, I think subconsciously we are putting a judgment to a behavior, how we feel about a certain behavior and how we want our dogs to behave, in the future as well. And I think that's worth exploring, I guess.
Yeah. So so I think this inspires me for the next auditorium conversation that we're going to have with 101 students. We're probably going to treats, praise versus celebration, acknowledgement versus appreciation. What are these fine lines, and how do we navigate those fine lines? Is a very interesting one. So yeah, I mean, for those of you who are signed up for 101, if you're part of the auditorium, and if you like us to talk about this, just send me a message. It'll just give me direction on where to go and what to talk about. And if you want Saujanya to address it, Saujanya, do you want to just repeat what are the options? Where can they hear you more talk about these things? There's an interesting question on what would be place to, like, I don't do treats. I just don't do treats. I do food. I do celebratory fun things. And then when I really can't avoid it, like in the case of medical stuff, it almost comes down to a bribe, right? It's like, please take this. I have to I have to put this medicine down your gut. I might even use it as a mask. I might put the medicine in the food and give it. And those are like very unconventional and rare uses of them. Most of the times I don't have to do it. But yeah, that's another deep dive that we can do. Where do we actually use treats, or how do we use food, or should we be using food at all? Or,
Yeah.
Should food be a right? And what role does it have to play with security
Yeah.
and feeling secure and secure attachments?
Yeah, I think that's a good conversation to have, I think, as a tangent from here, I think, in terms of how we use, because I don't think I use treats, but I do give a lot of snacks to Zoe, because she is quite a foodie and she loves food. And it's more of a, you love food and we're eating, yes, go ahead. I think that is how I use food. It's rarely ever treats, and of course for like sniffaries and like sniffing activities and stuff like that. But otherwise I don't think I use treats for like behaviors per se. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you can obviously, if some of you have not signed up for CE 101, please do. I think I will keep saying that because it's changed my life a lot. So I think that would be a great place to start. And I think auditorium and conclaves have uh, also continued a lot of conversations and ideas. I'm looking forward to the one that's coming up. I think it's next weekend, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about difficult dogs, the Barks way and difficult dogs.
Interesting. Okay.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, difficult dogs. Okay, that would be great. And Yeah, I'm doing YouTube lives on Wednesday, 7 p.m. on my channel. You can just come in. There is no, I mean, you don't have to sign up. You don't have to pay, nothing. You can just come, share your ideas, listen to what I have to ramble on, because I love just sharing whatever has come up in the past week. I'll put the
Wednesday,
chat.
7 p.m. IST, right?
IST, yeah,
Indian
IST,
Standard Time.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've been like, I have to keep telling my brain IST, IST. I keep like forgetting. And yeah, I'm planning to do the Patreon thing. So that is the other thing as well that's available. Any other, we will obviously try and then share this recording after a few days,
Yeah.
once we are able to.
And our
So
standard practice has been that we have the WhatsApp group. We open it up. So in case anybody wants to have discussions around this, the WhatsApp group will be open for a few days. And we do have the Facebook group. So, please put your thoughts there as well so we can have discussions around it. The ideas are fresh in our mind, so we'll be able to respond faster. So yeah, just do think about it and put your ideas there, and let's see if we can kind of carry this conversation on for a little bit longer, because we're
yes.
so out of time.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sindhu, for like just, bouncing off the conversation here and discussing and then being here, because I really wanted to talk about this. And thanks everybody for being here as well and then adding in your insights and your inputs for this conversation. I will open up the WhatsApp group so we can just take up the conversation there as well. And we will share the recording in a few days. Just give us some time and we will share the recording as
Yeah,
well.
I want to thank you as well. I'm so glad you brought this up, and thanks to everybody who's stuck with us, joined in today. It was absolutely a pleasure. It was really my pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much. See
All
you
right,
in the
guys.
next Pawnder Club event, I
Yeah.
guess. Bye.
Bye.